Welcome to Facing the Canon, and I'm delighted that my guest is my friend Beth Redman. Beth, it's great to have this opportunity to talk with you and hear a little of your own story. Where were you born, Beth?
I was born in Crawley on a council estate and brought up there. I lived there for 19 years until I met Matt and Mike Pilavarchi, and my life changed direction in a big way.
Oh, well, let's talk a little bit about your upbringing. How was life in your family?
The best thing that ever happened to me was that my mum took me to church from a really young age. And probably the hardest thing that happened to me was growing up in a home where there's domestic violence. One of my first memories is sort of a very, very negative one that had a big impact on me. And I think I just grew up quite frightened, quite alone, and with very low self-esteem. And like I say, the best thing that happened to me was going to church and being in a youth group. And so I knew that there was a big picture, and there was a God who loved me, and there was ultimately a way out, and he made a way for me. And when I left home, my life changed in an amazing, amazing way.
So growing up, were you scared with regard to the domestic violence? How did you feel growing up?
Well, there are things that were really normal to me. We used to have posters on the doors because there were punch holes through bedroom doors. There was punch marks through walls, MDF walls, not concrete or anything.
Yes.
But, I had marks on me, which I just knew you just had to say that this happened rather than that happened. But that was normal to me, but I was scared, and I realised when I really let Jesus into my heart how much pain I had held in, and how I was then finally able to feel safe, which is amazing.
So did your mother go to church? How was it that you ended up going?
Yeah, my mum went to church, and she really believed in Jesus, and she really wanted us to know Jesus. And so we were taken along, and I went to a church on our council estate, and first of all it was a Catholic church early in the morning, and then it sort of switched over at 9 o'clock, and the Church of England came in, and then later on the sort of Free Church came in, and I also went to a Church of England school, so I was really blessed. I went to the Free Church on Sunday, and I went to a Church of England primary, middle and secondary school, so I sort of grew up singing hymns and worship songs and having, Bible verses spoken over me, and that definitely sustained me, that definitely saved my life.
So you're kind of multi-flavoured.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you've tried all the flavours of ice cream.
Yeah.
So can you remember a particular day when you would say that you were introduced to Jesus, or you began to follow Jesus? Or was it gradual?
It was like a river that was beside my life all my life. That's all I remember. And I loved worship. I absolutely loved worship. It's where I felt safe. It's where I felt at home. And I remember one day looking up and just noticing someone's name. I think it was Noel and Tricia Richards. I was probably 5 or 6, I don't know. Maybe I couldn't read then. Maybe it's later on. But and just seeing their name and just knowing that's what I'm going to do with my life, with my husband. I want to write those songs that the church sings. So that was like a really big moment for me as a child. But later on, I would say I had a definite sort of major conversion when I was about 18. And I went on a Christian skiing holiday to find a boyfriend, and that didn't work out. But somebody was talking about Jesus, and I was listening to the talk, and I was looking at the mountains, and I was listening to the talk, and I thought, God is big, and he is amazing, and he has made me, and it's enough of the baggage. It's enough of saying, but this happened to me, or that happened to me. It's time to love him and follow him and have fear for him. And at that moment, my life changed, and within a few weeks, I was full-time evangelist, telling people about Jesus. So it was an amazing sort of conversion.
And what kind of ministry did you start doing?
Well, I'd done some tapes, which is really, people bring them up and play them for a joke, and they were so awful. My first song that I wrote was ABC, Jesus Loves Me, It's Easier Than 1, 2, 3, and I would perform that in my church on a Sunday. I was so proud of that song. Oh. And that was it's not that great.
Can you perform it now?
I don't really want to talk about it. I don't know why I brought it up. I brought it
right.
up. But I would make these tapes, and people would be so sweet in the church and like buy them and stuff. And somebody gave it to somebody, and I was laying on my floor. I'd had this amazing experience on this skiing holiday, and you know, I was singing this little song to Jesus on the floor on my keyboard. I only knew one chord, the chord of C, so all my songs are written in the chord of C. And the phone rang. And it was this guy, and he said, I've heard your tape, I've heard ABC, Jesus Loves Me. And what are you doing at the moment? I said, well, I'm just, you know, I'm working in sales, telesales, you know, but I've just made this amazing conversion. He said, why don't you come and do some schools work with us and do some singing? So I was like, okay then. So I quit my job and I started doing that. And then I went with Youth for Christ on a year project. And then I joined the Worldwide Message Tribe. And then I went to Soul Survivor. And it's just been amazing since that moment.
And where did you meet your husband, Matt?
I met my husband right here.
Here in this church?
When I was 19,
yes.
I had just joined Youth for Christ, and we pulled up at this church, and there were two chaps talking just outside under the porch, and there was a Greek chap, and there was a little cute, there was a little cute, you know, pretty hot chap next to him.
I think the Greek guy was selling kebabs.
He was nice. He was a nice man in his own special way.
Yes.
And they were talking. They were talking, and I honestly, this doesn't happen. I don't think you should say this to other people, but I heard a voice, and it said, you're going to marry that man, and you're going to marry him in this church. And I just wanted to check, do you mean the Greek? Or do you mean
Or the other guy. So you didn't know who the other guy was?
I didn't know. I'd never met him.
Right.
And I hadn't heard of his music. And you know what's amazing? You just don't need to tell people that stuff. You just hide it in your heart and you get on with what you're doing. And I found out who Matt was, and I sung his songs, and I heard his story, and I thought, what an amazing man. When I heard his songs, I'm like, what has happened to this guy that he knows God in that way? Something's happened to him. And I got to know him as a friend, and I got to know Mike as a friend, and then a few years later, we were married in this church. It was a really amazing story.
So how long after that particular day did you start dating?
Well, we had a strange dating experience because Matt thought it was unholy to get married. And so he had told me that he wasn't one of those sad people that wanted to get married, and he was very fulfilled in just ministry. But I was quite offended that he told me that.
Yeah.
But the funny thing was, he phoned me the next day and said, I am one of those sad people that want to get married. Do you want to go on a date? So it was about 4 years before we were married, about 3-4 years, and we were friends. And we just did life together. I sang with him, we were at events. That was kind of how we dated. We did stuff together, and we loved each other's hearts, and we loved who each other were, and we loved everything. The future looked really bright, and we got married here, and we have 5 children, and it's been a really special journey.
How long have you been married?
13 years.
13 years. So you've been living with a lead worshipper for a few years. Is he so heavenly minded? He's of no earthly use.
He's so annoying because he's just so wise, and he just goes like the short way the whole time. He's pretty special, but he is very creative. So many times I'll turn over in bed, have a nightmare, or or you think, where is he? Where's he? It's 2 a.m. Where's he gone? And he's downstairs with his guitar having just a really special moment, and he's just a creative, he's not kind of straight down the line. He's just very creative. He's always crafting songs. He's always thinking outside the box. He comes up with the most random quotes, which I'm sure you'll hear tonight, but he's amazing.
And you've got children. Tell us about your children.
Well, we have 5 children.
Yes.
We have 1 daughter and 4 sons. And that in itself is an amazing miracle. 5 children is hilarious. It's loads of work. But after the birth of our second child, we loved children. We kind of decided we wanted to have a big family. And then we lost a baby. And that was that was a big shock. I don't know why, but for some reason I thought that kind of stuff wouldn't happen to us. But it did. And so we processed that, and then very quickly afterwards we had another loss, and then another loss, and we ended up having 6 miscarriages. And actually a lot of people think that's how we wrote Blessed Be the Name, but I think that's actually where we learnt to sing Blessed Be the Name. We'd written that way before that had happened, and then actually we walked it through and really learnt how to sing that song. And then we were planning a party for my 30th birthday, and I really so wanted the situation to be over, and I prayed, and we're walking it out quite publicly. And so we'd invited a lot of neighbours and friends. We'd moved house, big 30th, we invited about 150 people. And Matt wanted to write a song that we could sing to our neighbours and our friends, and we hired a gospel choir that sort of really spoke about where we're at in our life. And I actually had a miscarriage on the day of that party. But we had written You Never Let Go. And so we were able to sing that to our friends and to our neighbours right in the middle of that circumstance. And, you know, it's not always easy, but you just keep walking through, you keep speaking truth, you keep singing truth. And what is amazing is that it was over. We had 6 miscarriages, and then we were able to have another child, and then we were able to have another one and another one. So we were just... So it's been an amazing journey.
Amazing adventure, yeah. There are some plants that produce a beautiful fragrance, but they only produce a beautiful fragrance when they're crushed. And I think that often is what happens in our lives, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's interesting what you're now focusing on in terms of your work with human trafficking. Tell us about how did you get into that, and what are you trying to do?
Well, I was in an event with a woman called Christine Kane, and I'd heard of her through Hillsong, and I'd seen her speak and on God TV, and was just so impressed by her. She's so dynamic, on fire. But I was at a conference with her, June 2010, and we were in the green room. We just were meeting and reconnecting, and I was talking about, you know, I just had my 5th baby, and we were moving back from America, and, you know, talking about life. And she started to tell me about some of the things that she was doing in her life, and she started to tell me about the issue of human trafficking, and she told me for the first time that there were 27 million slaves on the earth, and she told me that last year in America that almost $28 billion had been made from trafficking, and that it's this $1 million, that it's just huge, awful thing that is going on in the earth. And she told me there were baby factories. She told me all this information, and I just thought, how did I not know this stuff? Where have I been? I've been writing these songs, I've been singing these songs, I've been speaking to people in church. Why didn't I know about these 27 million slaves that I share the earth with? And I was completely, I mean, you can't sell this stuff to someone. Either the Holy Spirit does it inside of you, or not. And that's what happened. She told me, and we were in a bar, and I just fell on the floor, and I started weeping and crying, and I knew that it was time for me to wake up, and yes, encourage the church and write songs and sing songs and support Matt and do the best I can raising my children. But it's time to be a voice for those that don't have a voice, and it's time to stand up for those that slaves, there's never been so many slaves on the earth, and they've never been as cheap and easy to get as they are now. And so I just thought, well, what can I do? What do I do with this information? And so sat back for 6 months, prayed, thought about it. You don't want to react out of the flesh, because that's just going to do nothing. But sat back and decided with Matt that we wanted to do something. We wrote some songs. We started A21 here in the UK. And the vision and the dream is to be able to go into schools and to, you know, educate young people about this, get young people to actually get this under their skin, to write to their MPs, you know, be passionate about this. But also, it's not just awareness. You know, if I tell you, I'm just telling one more person. And it's not just prevention. You know, when we want to go to the places and get to these girls before they're taken, but we also want to be a place where these girls can be rescued and rehabilitated and restored, and given back their papers, given back their lives, given back their freedom, given back their voice. And so it's my dream to be able to start an A21 shelter here. There's one in the Ukraine, there's going to be one in Bulgaria, there's one in Greece. And so I was able to go to Greece with Christine, and she was trying to explain to me about this issue of human trafficking and how big it is. And as we were driving through the streets of Thessaloniki, you see prostitution is legal there, and the lights are on in these brothels, and they're open 24 hours a day. And as we were driving around, it's late at night, I'm exhausted, and you just see person after person after person going into these brothels, and there's no windows, there's just one tiny door in. But there's brothel after brothel, and inside of there, there's girl after girl after girl who's been tricked and deceived, trapped, and has found her way in there, and only 1% of those girls will ever be rescued. And as we came around the corner, trying to take it all in, this young girl stepped out of the shadow. And bearing in mind my daughter who's 11, she's sleeping at home, she's safe, she's loved, she's cared for. And out of the shadows this girl came, and she didn't look much older than our daughter. And she came out wearing the most illicit clothing. It was late, it was pouring with rain, it was dark. And she sold herself to us. She kind of had her hands on her hip and she pushed herself out towards the car. And you could see in the distance there was someone right far back, which was her pimp, watching over her. And as our car passed, another car pulled up and she got inside. And I just thought, something has to be done. I've got every person I can tell, I need to tell about this. Every moment I have, that spell, I want to give to this. I want to tell people, I want to rescue these girls.
I think there's a lot of misinformation, actually, Beth, with this whole area, because there's William Wilberforce abolished slavery, and so wait a minute, there are 27 million slaves today. It's like it kind of blows you away, really. When you say human trafficking, what exactly is happening?
Someone who's been trafficked is somebody who's first been deceived. Somebody who's been tricked and taken against their will into forced slavery. And that can be working in a factory for no money, next to nothing. That can be working in somebody's home. That can be the extreme of being sold by a relative, being trafficked on foot. I've met a girl who's trafficked on foot from Uganda to Greece. It took 2 months to get there. 19 girls died on the way. There are big extremes when we're talking about these 27 million. But they're basically somebody who's been deceived, taken against their will, and is in forced slavery.
And
here, women and children.
And here in England, in preparation for the Olympics, it's going to become big business.
It definitely is going to become big business. I mean, for the Olympics, there's about 18,000 construction workers that are now working in London. And the police estimate that now there are 2,000 new sex exploitation premises that have been set up just to service the needs of those there. And that's only going to grow and increase as the Olympics get closer and closer. And so we want to be able to, as the Olympics get closer, release this song, 27 million, get people singing, get people thinking about it. We want to be going into schools in London. We want to be going around the Olympic Village, raising awareness that this is happening now, but it's only going to get bigger and bigger. And it's not just something that's global and you can't touch it, and it's Greece or it's Uganda. It's here in the UK. It's happening, and it's growing, and it's dark, and it's away, but it's still happening and thriving.
So for those of us who are listening in to what you're just saying, what can we do?
Well, I think there's lots of things you can do, and you can go onto the A21 website, the a21campaign.org, and there are 7 things that you can do, because I think we all hear this stuff, and first of all, we can't believe it, and then when we take it in, we think, well, what can I do? But we really all can be a part of the solution, and it's not just being aware, but it's praying. That is a powerful weapon.
Sure.
It's giving. You can give to the charity, you can give to the shelters, you can give, but you can also, you can knit scarves for the girls that are in these shelters. You can send presents to them on Valentine's Day and at Christmas. You can make contact with them. You can start little prayer groups in your own church. You can become, ambassadors, and you can start saying, as a church, we care about this, and we want to start raising awareness in our area and raising money, and it's got to be here in Hertfordshire. So let's work with the police and find out where. Let's become a safe place. And you can work in your areas, work together, and be a part of being the change and turning this around. There's only, as I say, 1% of girls that are being rescued. And we want to see that growing and growing and growing, so that this is wiped out in our lifetime. It is, as you say, in William Wilberforce's day, it was supposed to be, that's it, the end of slavery, and there are now more slaves on the earth than there's ever been before. And so here we are, we're aware, we're together, we do what we can with what we've got in our hands, and we step forward and we make a change.
Wow, it's quite stirring, Beth, hearing you talk about human trafficking, and it's real, and we've got to do something, and we've all got to do. You can't do everything, but we can do something.
Exactly, and together we're a loud noise.
Absolutely.
And we're powerful force.
You've written this book, Beth, God Knows My Name. Tell us about this book.
Well, what happened in 2006, I had our third child, and some of my blood results had come back a bit strange, and they were a little bit worried about my liver. And they said, we're going to run some tests, but it'd be really helpful if you could talk to some of your immediate family members about, is there any liver problems in the family, anything like that. And that was automatically a little bit tricky, because I come from a very broken, fractured family, and I hadn't seen my father for many years at that point. There was very sporadic contact. But I had reached out with an email and just asked about this, is there any liver problems? And my dad had responded, and it's actually a devastating moment. But that became a defining moment. And he responded, and he said there was that in the family, and he did hope that I had that, and he hoped that I would suffer and that would make me a good person. And there was lots of other things in that email, and as I say, that's a devastating rejection. And so I took a step back, and Matt wasn't there, and I'm there by myself in that moment. But in that moment, God is enough, and there's truth, and there's recovery. That my father might have given me the ultimate rejection in that moment, but Jesus paid the ultimate price. And that does not have to be the t-shirt that I wear for the rest of my life, that I'm a victim, that this is where I've come from and this is what's been done to me, so this is therefore what I'm going to do to others. And it became a defining moment, because I thought, you know what, I'm going to find out everything that God the Father says about me, and I'm going to find out everything I can about recovery and restoration, and I want to tell everyone else that was a really hard email.
Yes.
But you know what? Something amazing has happened, is I know who I am, and I know whose I am. And actually what's amazing is obviously I wrote that book, and I haven't seen my father now for 10 years, and he doesn't know my children or my husband and things like that. But you learn to accept that. God gives you the grace to accept that and to move on in your life. But I had recently heard that my dad had read the book, and my dad had reached out to me and has been emailing and asking for a relationship and contact. And I love that when God is involved, it's not over.
Yes.
And actually restoration is possible. Anything is possible, but it's not over. And so I wrote that book, and kind of the full stop is, God loves me, and it's okay, and this is who we are, and don't worry, girls, let's go for it, lift up your heads, the future's bright. And I never ever foresaw that email coming. Dear Beth, I love you. Dear Beth, I'm sorry, love Dad. But that's the journey that just so recently has begun. So maybe I'll do another book.
There'll be another story.
There'll be another story.
Beth, it's wonderful listening to you, because obviously I know a little bit more about your upbringing and your life, that you haven't allowed your past hurts to hinder you, and with God in your life, the same power that raised Jesus from the dead lives in his followers, and therefore the potential for the future is huge.
Amazing.
And you're a real testimony to that.
Thank you so much.
It was a delight to talk to you. Thank you very much, Beth. I'm j.john. I support compassion, and compassion supports facing the Canon. Please enjoy the film.
Well, we're here at a compassion project in Ethiopia, and just the work that Compassion is doing is just absolutely extraordinary. The amazing thing is that each child that gets sponsored doesn't only get healthcare, education and their needs met, but they also get introduced to Jesus.
Morning,
and the faith of these children is just extraordinary.
It's just quite incredible to think about how we're actually meeting these children who have been found by the local church. The church has gone out, found the children who are in the greatest need. They've given them the start in life, and most importantly, they've introduced them to Jesus.
And yesterday we saw some students that have gone through the entire programme, and they are world changers, and they're staying in Ethiopia because they want to change Ethiopia for the better. They want to stamp out poverty, and these are people who've gone through this programme just because someone chose to sponsor them for £21 a month. I mean, it's nothing basically, £21 a month, just thinking about what we spend £21 on in England.
It's an absolute privilege for us to be able to help these children, to sponsor them. The work that Compassion is doing is changing this country, but more importantly, it's changing these children's lives.